They say grief makes time blurry, like trying to read a clock through tears. But there are moments so sharp, so precise, that even heartbreak can't dull them. Daniel's funeral was one of those moments. The air was thick with solemnity. The chapel smelled like lilies and old wood, and every creak of the pews sounded like bones breaking under the weight of finality. I stood there, 68 years old and hollowed out like an old tree struck by lightning. My son was gone. My only son. The last real piece of my family since my wife passed 5 winters ago. Daniel wasn't just blood. He was purpose. I'd helped him build his logistics company from a garage operation to a multi-state success. Every late night, every back-breaking decision, every risk, we took them together. But now, I was just Richard. No title, no fatherly duties. Just a man in a worn black suit watching strangers pat each other on the back and say the kinds of things people say when they're too uncomfortable to be honest. He's in a better place. He died doing what he loved. Time heals all wounds. Bullshit. And then there was Jenna, Daniel's wife of 7 years. Sharp, immaculate, calculating. I never disliked her openly, but something in her eyes always read like she was scanning you for weaknesses. She wore black, of course, but not the kind of black that looks like mourning. It was stylish, curated, like she'd picked it out with an Instagram post in mind. She barely cried. In the corner of the room, while the last of the guests sipped coffee in plastic cups, she was already whispering into her phone. "We need to deal with the house, the accounts, the cars," she said. I wasn't meant to hear it, but grief heightens the senses. I caught every word, clear as the chime of the service bell up front. I didn't say anything. I just watched. Felt like I was seeing a banker tabulate assets instead of a wife burying a husband. When the last flower arrangement had been packed up and the chapel had gone from mourning to mop buckets and janitorial routine, I stood by the door watching the world shrink around me. I wasn't expecting a parade or even sympathy. I just wanted 1 second, a flicker of recognition that Daniel had been part of me. But Jenna walked past, clipboard in hand, lips pressed into a neutral line. Then she stopped. "We should talk," she said, her voice the kind people use when trying to sound considerate but are just being efficient. "About the house. I'll need some time to sort things. It's best if you move out. I need to get everything in order." I looked at her like I was trying to decipher a foreign language. I blinked. My mouth opened, then shut again. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I didn't trust myself not to let everything come pouring out in one bitter, splintered stream of rage. Move out? That house. That house Daniel and I worked on together for years. The back deck we built with our hands. The kitchen I remodeled myself after Carol passed. The garage that held the blueprints for what eventually became his empire. And now she was giving me a deadline like I was some couch-surfing squatter. I nodded once, said nothing, because I wasn't ready to fight. Not yet. The numbness of grief still pressed like cotton in my ears, and the sharp pain behind my eyes made it impossible to think clearly. I couldn't feel my hands, only the tightness of my chest and the rhythmic throb of a heart trying its best not to crack in half. Jenna didn't wait for a reply. She turned and walked away, tapping her phone like she was ordering takeout. I stood alone at the chapel door. The wind outside had teeth. I turned my collar up, watched the hearse drive away, and wondered how many ways a man can lose the same son, first to ambition, then to marriage, now to death. And still, I didn't cry. Not because I didn't want to, but because the pain had already hollowed me out. There was nothing left to spill, just silence, and the slow realization that everything familiar was slipping out from under me. The next morning, I packed a small bag. Not because I agreed with her, but because I needed time to think, to figure out where I stood in a world that suddenly had no place for me. I grabbed a few clothes, Daniel's old watch from the drawer. He'd stopped wearing it years ago but never threw it out, and the fishing photo we took up at Pine Ridge the year before he got married. On the back, written in black ink in Daniel's scratchy hand, were the words, "The company wouldn't exist without you, Dad. I made sure of it." I stared at that sentence for a long time. It didn't feel like comfort. It felt like a clue. But I didn't know what it pointed to yet. All I knew was this. They thought I was out of the game, that I'd walk away quietly. But the thing about grief is, once it burns everything else down, it leaves behind something pure. Resolve. I zipped the bag and walked out without saying goodbye. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. I came back exactly 7 days later. A Friday, late afternoon, with just enough light left to make you believe the day hadn't completely died. The air was crisp and dry, early winter coming in soft, like it was apologizing for what would follow. I remember walking up the steps and thinking maybe, just maybe, I had dreamed it all. That the funeral, Jenna's cold words, her soulless efficiency, had been something grief twisted into paranoia. I reached into my pocket for the keys I'd carried for over 15 years. Same bronze keychain Daniel gave me one Christmas, a little compass charm attached to a carabiner. He used to say it was so I'd never get lost again. I smiled at the irony as I pressed the key into the lock. It didn't turn. I pulled it out. Checked again. Tried the spare. Same result. The deadbolt wouldn't budge. My hand tightened around the doorknob like that would change anything. I jiggled it. Pushed. Nothing. A note was taped to the door in Jenna's handwriting. I recognized it immediately. Sharp, narrow, deliberate strokes. No salutation, no apology. Just 4 sentences scribbled in blue ink. Locks changed. No will means it's all mine. I spoke to a lawyer. Do not enter. That was it. No explanation. No mention of Daniel. No sign that I had once built that house with my own sweat. Just a legal claim written like a grocery list. I stared at those lines for a full minute before the absurdity of it hit me. I'd buried my son 7 days ago, and now I was locked out of the only home I had left. Jenna hadn't even waited for the earth over Daniel's grave to settle. She moved faster than grief could breathe. Across the street, the Robinsons' front door creaked open. Old Mr. Robinson stepped out in his cardigan and slippers, holding something under his arm. "I figured," he said, walking over, "you'd come back." I nodded once. She dropped a bag off, said it was all you'd need, didn't want to hold on to it. He handed me a navy duffel, soft-sided and light. I kept it in my garage so the cold wouldn't get to anything. I took it and thanked him, voice low. "She's got some nerve," he added, almost to himself. I didn't answer. I just turned and sat on the edge of the porch, setting the bag beside me. I unzipped it slowly. Inside were exactly 3 things. 1 flannel shirt, Daniel's, from our last cabin trip. Still smelled faintly of pine and campfire. His old watch, worn leather band, the face scratched at 3 o'clock, and that fishing photo, the same one I'd taken from the nightstand. But there was something else now. A note taped to the back I hadn't seen before. It was in Daniel's handwriting, older, more mature, a different ink, black ballpoint. His cursive was cleaner now, more refined than when he wrote it years ago. "The company wouldn't exist without you, Dad. I made sure of it." But underneath that, almost like a continuation, he'd added another line. "Check the filings. You're protected." My breath caught. Daniel wasn't the sentimental type. He didn't leave hidden notes or breadcrumbs. If he wrote something like that, it was intentional. It meant something. I zipped the duffel back up and stood slowly. My knees ached, and the cold was starting to cut through my coat. I turned to Mr. Robinson. "Can I leave this with you again? I've got something I need to look into." "Course," he said, waving me toward the garage. "You want to ride somewhere?" I shook my head. "No, I need to make a call." I walked to the edge of the block where the streetlight buzzed and cast a cone of pale light. I pulled out my phone, half dead, cracked screen, and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I hadn't touched in over 4 years. Gabe Teller, Daniel's old business partner. They'd started the company together back when it was just the two of them, hauling logistics contracts in a borrowed van and eating gas station sandwiches for lunch. I helped them back then, not just with advice and money, with structure, planning, incorporation paperwork. I even sat in on strategy meetings when they got too in the weeds. Gabe was sharp, younger than Daniel by 6 years, but smart enough to listen when needed. I hit call. He picked up on the second ring. "Richard? It's been a while, Gabe." There was a pause, then, "I was at the funeral. Didn't want to bother you. I'm really sorry. I need a favor. Anything. Do you still have access to the corporate registry?" Another pause. "Yeah. You okay?" "No," I said, "but I think Daniel left me something. Something Jenna doesn't know about." Gabe didn't ask more questions. That's the thing about smart people. They know when to stay quiet. "Come by the office tomorrow. We'll dig." I hung up without saying goodbye. I stood there for another minute, phone still in hand, staring at the house I could no longer enter. The porch lights were on. Warm. Familiar. The home where Daniel learned to ride a bike, where we put up Christmas lights, where we buried Carol's ashes under the maple tree in the back garden. Gone. Just like that. But grief has a way of burning the indecision out of you. There's a moment when you stop trying to understand and start moving. I'd hit that moment. Jenna thought she'd erased me, shut the door, turned the lock. But Daniel, he'd left me a key, and tomorrow I was going to find it. It's funny how fast your life can shrink. One day you're in your own home, sitting at your kitchen table with the Sunday paper and the same chipped mug your wife used to fill with black coffee. The next, you're folding your clothes into a borrowed grocery bag, hoping the smell of someone else's laundry detergent doesn't make you feel even more displaced than you already do. I spent the next 2 weeks hopping between borrowed sofas like some middle-aged drifter. Friends, ex-co-workers, guys who owed me favors from back in the day. They were kind, most of them, in that uncomfortable way people are when they're not sure how to treat a man who's lost everything but won't say it aloud. I didn't ask for much. Just a place to sleep, a hot shower, and maybe a cup of coffee if there was one going. But shame? That came free. There's a kind of dignity that slips away when you're the one placing your boots beside someone else's front door and saying, "Just a night or two. I'll be out of your hair soon." And even if they don't say it, you can feel the unspoken expiration date ticking above your head like some invisible clock. Night after night, I laid on unfamiliar cushions under borrowed blankets, staring at ceilings that weren't mine, thinking about Daniel, about Jenna, about the way she'd said, "It's best if you move out," like she was talking to a tenant whose lease had expired, not the man who taught her husband to drive a stick, to change a flat, to hold a promise like it mattered. I kept going back to that note Daniel left me. "Check the filings. You're protected." I hadn't told anyone about it. Not Gabe, not the Robinsons, not even my oldest friend Marty, whose couch I'd spent the last 3 nights on, cradling a heating pad under my lower back like some bitter souvenir of aging and betrayal. And it wasn't just the note, it was the photo. That damn fishing photo. Daniel had written something else on the back in pen, right under the first message, almost like an afterthought. Don't argue. Document. That line, 5 syllables, kept echoing through my skull like a drumbeat. Don't argue. Document. It wasn't just advice. It was a directive, a warning, a lifeline. By day 4 of my exile, I'd started writing everything down. Not in some emotional diary, but like evidence. Bullet points, names, dates, conversations, transfers, things Jenna said, things she did. Times I saw her car at the firm's downtown office, even though she never worked there. I found a cheap notebook at a gas station, stuffed it into my duffel, and treated it like a case file. I wasn't ready to fight. Yet. But I wasn't going to wander blindly into a war without a record either. That's when I started digging. I borrowed Marty's laptop and set up shop at a corner table in the public library, the same one where Daniel used to do his homework back when we couldn't afford decent internet at home. The corporate registry was public. You just had to know where to look and what to search. And I did. I remembered the company name Daniel and Gabe started under. DGR Logistics LLC. It had been rebranded twice since then. Now it went by DG Strategic Freight, slick new logo, shiny new board. But the backbone? That was all the same. And when I pulled up the filings, my hands actually shook, because there it was, plain as day. Richard Green, listed shareholder, 12% equity, diluted over the years, sure, but real. Post-IPO, that stake still meant something. It wasn't just a sentimental nod. It was legal, binding, verified by the transfer agent. Daniel had made me a part owner, silently and irrevocably. And more than that, in the founders' agreement, which I had helped draft before they had a single truck to their name, there was a clause, hidden in the legalese but potent once you understood it. No capital structure changes or share transfers affecting family-designated blocks may occur without consent of the listed familial stakeholder. Translation? Jenna couldn't touch my shares, not unless I signed off, and I sure as hell hadn't. I leaned back in the wooden library chair, heart pounding. This wasn't about just keeping a few shares out of spite. This was control, access, leverage. Daniel had given me a legal foothold before he died. He knew Jenna, knew how she moved, knew what she'd try to do, and he'd built this safeguard, not loudly, not proudly, but like a son who still believed in the man who raised him. I sat in that library until closing, pages open, tabs stacked on the browser, notebook filling with dates and paragraphs. Then I made 2 calls. First to Gabe. "Hey," I said when he picked up. "I found something. You were right to tell me to dig." "You're listed?" he asked. "More than listed. I've got protections." Silence on the other end. Then, Jesus. Jenna doesn't know, does she? "No," I said, "but she's about to find out." And then I made my second call, to someone I hadn't spoken to in years but who owed me a favor from a settlement back in 2011. An attorney, not just any attorney, a probate and business litigation specialist named Connie Wells. When she picked up, she said, "Is this Richard Green?" "Yep." "You still fishing up near Pine Ridge?" "Not lately," I said. "Got a new kind of catch I'm chasing." She chuckled. "How serious is this?" I told her, briefly, factually. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "Come to my office Monday morning. Bring everything." And just like that, the tide shifted. I wasn't couch hopping anymore. I wasn't grieving in silence or waiting for someone to hand me a sliver of what I'd earned. I was building a case. Jenna might have changed the locks. She might have handed me a duffel like a dog being put out to the street. But Daniel? He left me more than memories. He left me armor. Monday morning arrived like a hangover after a long night of regret. I'd spent the weekend buried in documents, some digital, some printed, some handwritten. I had post-its on my motel mirror, notebooks full of cross-referenced company dates, and an ache in my lower back that wouldn't quit no matter how much I stretched. But I was sharper than I'd felt in weeks. Clear, focused, cold. The office building where Connie Wells worked was a modest two-story structure wedged between a chiropractor and a tax preparation service. Nothing flashy, but that was how you knew she was good. The real killers don't need marble lobbies. She met me in the reception area with a firm handshake and eyes that told me she already had a dozen moves mapped out. "Mr. Green," she said, "come on back. Let's see what kind of storm we're walking into." We sat in a small conference room, gray table, black chairs, no pretense. I laid everything out: the phishing photo, the founder's agreement, the corporate filings from the registry, the shareholder ledger Gabe had printed out for me that confirmed it. I was listed, 12%, post-IPO, active. Connie read through the stack like she was reviewing a war plan, her brows furrowed, her pen scratched notes beside legal clauses. When she finally looked up, her face had changed, not surprised anymore, resolved. "You've got more leverage than I expected," she said. "This isn't just sentimental. This is a control stake." I nodded. "And Jenna's moving like she owns the whole deck." Connie leaned back, eyes sharp. "She doesn't. Not even close. And without a will, she can't do a damn thing until the court opens probate and assigns an administrator." I let the words sink in. No will, no executor, which meant, legally, Jenna had no authority to sell, transfer, or even manage Daniel's assets. Not until the court said so. "What's stopping her?" I asked. "Nothing," Connie said, "except you." That's when I realized what this was. Not a fight over grief. Not a petty family squabble. This was a quiet war over power. And Daniel, even in death, had placed me right in the center of the board. She tapped her pen against the founder's agreement. "This clause here, family designated blocks, it's rare, smart. It means that no capital structure changes, share reallocations, or even board decisions affecting the family stake can be made without your consent. So, she can't even pretend to represent the estate's interest in those shares. Not unless the court names her personal representative. And until that happens, the company legally has to recognize the shareholder of record, which is you." The gears started turning in my head. She continued, "Here's the move. We file an emergency petition in probate court to appoint a temporary personal representative, neutral, court-assigned. At the same time, we notify the company's transfer agent and board that you're asserting your rights as shareholder. That'll trigger a litigation hold. They'll have to preserve all internal communications. And Jenna? She gets a letter, a formal demand to cease all activity relating to the estate. Any assets she's touched, any transfers she's made, we demand an accounting. If she's moved money, that's dissipation of estate assets. The court can freeze everything." For the first time since Daniel died, I felt the ground solid under my feet again. "Gabe's still with the company," I said. "He's on the board." "Perfect. We'll loop him in. But all communications go through counsel now. This isn't just about family. It's about fiduciary duty. If Jenna has misrepresented herself as executor to anyone, that's fraud." I let out a slow breath. My palms were sweating, but not from nerves, from adrenaline. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was planning. That afternoon, Connie's team prepared the emergency filing, thick with declarations, citations, and exhibits. We attached Daniel's death certificate, the shareholder ledger, the founder's agreement, my declaration, sworn under penalty of perjury. And then we sent a notice to the company's legal counsel, addressed formally, to whom it may concern. This letter is to advise you that Richard Green, as shareholder of record, is asserting his rights under the governing documents of DG Strategic Freight. Please place an immediate litigation hold on all records pertaining to estate-related communication and share ownership status. A probate court filing is forthcoming. Any attempt to transfer, reassign, or otherwise alter the status of the Green family block will be considered a breach of corporate governance and subject to further legal action. We didn't make threats. We issued facts. Gabe called me that night. She's been contacting people, he said. Vendors, investors, acting like she's in charge. Not anymore, I replied. That ends tomorrow. And I meant it. The next morning, Connie filed the emergency motion with the probate court. A judge would review it within 72 hours. Until then, we sent a courtesy copy to Jenna's attorney, an estate planner she'd been working with who clearly thought the absence of a will meant open season. We included a cover letter and an exhibit list. At the bottom, Connie had written, in her neat cursive signature, "We request voluntary compliance. Otherwise, our next correspondence will be through formal service." I didn't need to decode the legal language. It meant step back or get steamrolled. I spent that night on Marty's couch again, but this time I didn't feel like a stray. I felt like a man sharpening his sword, because Jenna had underestimated the wrong person. And Daniel? He'd given me just enough to push the first domino. Now I was watching the whole chain begin to fall. By Thursday morning, I had more than documents. I had a war room. Connie didn't just file the emergency petition. She began assembling a response strategy like a general prepping for a siege. She had that calm, clipped confidence of someone who's seen every shade of family betrayal and lived to draw up a game plan for the next. "Now we turn this from reaction to containment," she said as we sat in her downtown office. "You've got your shareholder rights. We're filing for representative control. But if we want to freeze assets and recover what she's touched, we need to know exactly what we're dealing with." That's when she introduced me to Derek Harper, her go-to forensic accountant. He didn't look like much at first. Thin guy, early 40s, wire-framed glasses, sleeves rolled up over forearms that had never known manual labor. But when he spoke, his tone had the weight of someone who dug through financial crimes for breakfast. "Show me where the money went," I told him, sliding the first of 3 folders across the table. Derek opened it, scanned the first few statements, and nodded like a surgeon reading pre-op charts. Bank accounts, transfers, wire logs. If she moved anything over $10,000, I'll find the path. If she tried to hide it in cash withdrawals or trust transfers, we'll follow those too. "She's not dumb," I said, "but she's fast, ruthless." "That's when they slip," he replied, flipping a page. "It's the rush that leaves the cracks." Over the next 4 hours, Derek cross-referenced Daniel's known joint accounts with Jenna, flagged every suspicious transaction since the day of his death, and pulled up a series of out-of-state wire transfers that caught even Connie's attention. "You see this?" he said, tapping his pen against one line. 3 transfers to newly opened accounts in Nevada, small-town credit unions, all initiated under her name, but from accounts that previously held joint business deposits. "She's liquidating," Connie said. "Trying to," Derek corrected. "But the accounts were still under Daniel's name when the transfers began. That's illegal without court authority. She's exposed." Connie's eyes flicked to me. "We can use this." It wasn't about catching Jenna in a crime, yet. It was about leverage, about showing the court that she'd already begun treating Daniel's estate like a buffet and herself like the only guest with a plate. By that evening, we had a full packet ready: itemized accounts, flagged transfers, copies of Jenna's bank filings, some of which, thanks to Daniel's shared access, I still had digital records for. Connie drafted a motion for injunctive relief, the legal equivalent of slamming a steel door shut. If granted, the court would issue a temporary freeze on all estate assets, block Jenna from acting as a de facto administrator, and appoint a third-party overseer until the probate process formally named a representative. While Connie filed that, I made another call to the company's transfer agent. A woman named Lisa answered, polite but guarded. "Hi, I'm Richard Green," I began. "I'm a shareholder of record for DG Strategic Freight." Her tone shifted. "Can you confirm your ID number, Mr. Green?" I gave it. She tapped keys for a few seconds. Then, "Yes, we have you listed at 12%. I'm notifying you of pending legal proceedings," I said. "You'll receive a formal letter by Monday. In the meantime, please consider this a litigation hold. No share transfers, board notices, or communications relating to family-held stock are to occur without formal legal clearance." Lisa didn't argue. "We understand," she said. "You're not the first to call with questions this week." "Let me guess, Jenna?" "I can't disclose that," she replied. But her silence after told me everything. I hung up, pulled out my notebook, and added one more line to the growing list under Document Everything. That night I sat in the tiny spare bedroom of another friend's place, flipping through my notes, watching the paper trail build. Jenna had moved fast. She assumed she could bulldoze the details. But details are what I built my life on, from carpentry to logistics to raising a son who trusted me enough to leave behind a key in the middle of the storm. That weekend, I met with Connie and Derek again. We refined the asset list, every bank transfer Jenna initiated, every estate-related decision she made, every whisper in Daniel's absence that she tried to turn into ownership. Then Connie drafted the formal demand letter. "Jenna, our office represents Richard Green, shareholder of record and immediate family member of the late Daniel Green. You are hereby formally instructed to cease and desist from any further representation of the estate in any capacity, including asset transfers, financial management, or communication with company officers or vendors. Your conduct constitutes an unauthorized assumption of fiduciary authority and will be addressed in court. A request for injunctive relief is now pending. You are further requested to produce within 5 days a complete accounting of all estate-related transactions initiated since Daniel Green's passing. Failure to comply will result in formal discovery requests and potential referral for civil penalties." It was clean, blunt, final. We mailed it certified and sent a copy via email to her estate attorney. The next day, Connie filed notice with the probate court clerk. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was worried, but because I could finally feel the gears turning. Jenna had built her plan on silence, on momentum. But Daniel had left me more than equity. He'd left me a defense. And now? Now I had a team. Jenna didn't respond right away. That was the first sign we had her rattled. The certified letter was signed for at 9:42 a.m. Monday. Her attorney acknowledged receipt by email at 11:07. And then, silence. No rebuttal, no denial, no phony offer to talk things through. That wasn't her style. Jenna was the type to go on the offensive, not retreat. But she wasn't used to being challenged by someone who had nothing left to lose. Meanwhile, Derek kept digging. Each morning he sent over spreadsheets like surgical reports, cold, precise, and damning. Jenna had been moving money like someone trying to erase a chalkboard with a fire hose. Large transfers from Daniel's business account, $18,000 to a new checking account in her name, another $9,300 to a brokerage in Connecticut, multiple cash withdrawals just under the federal reporting threshold. She wasn't just acting prematurely. She was acting like the estate was hers by decree. But Daniel didn't leave a decree. He left a mess, and I was the one sweeping it into a pile, piece by piece. By Wednesday afternoon, Connie's motion for injunctive relief had been assigned to a probate judge. We didn't wait for the ruling to tighten the screws. Connie sent a formal notice to DG Strategic Freight's legal counsel. The letter wasn't accusatory. It was a clear presentation of facts. Mr. Green is a documented shareholder. There is an ongoing probate dispute. A motion for injunctive relief is pending. Jenna Green is not recognized by the court as a representative of the estate. As such, she is not authorized to engage with corporate matters or access shareholder information. That letter hit like a hammer behind velvet gloves. 2 hours later, the company's general counsel emailed back, "We've received your materials and have notified the board accordingly. Until further notice, Mr. Green will be recognized as the sole active family shareholder. We await the court's ruling." That same evening, I got a text from Gabe. "Board meeting called for next week. You'll be on the invite." I stared at those words for a long time. Not because I didn't expect them, but because it hit me all at once. After weeks of sleeping on couches and nursing wounds too old for bandages, I was stepping back into the room where decisions were made, where Daniel once sat, where Jenna never belonged. But the most satisfying blow hadn't landed yet. The next morning, just as I finished my second coffee in the kitchenette of the modest rental I was using, Connie called. The judge ruled. I straightened in my chair. "You got the injunction," she said, "effective immediately." She read the order aloud. "Jenna Green is hereby restrained from engaging in any and all activity involving estate assets, financial transactions, or representation of the late Daniel Green's affairs until the appointment of a personal representative. The court further orders a temporary hold on all financial accounts associated with the estate and requests an accounting of any and all transfers made by the respondent since the date of death." I didn't say anything for a moment, just let the silence hang in the air, thick with something that felt like justice. "I want to see her face," I finally muttered. Connie chuckled. "If she doesn't return the assets voluntarily, you might get to under oath." And then, as if the universe had been waiting for its cue, I got a second call, this one from a restricted number. I answered. "Richard Green." There was a beat of silence. Then, "You went to court." Jenna's voice, sharp and brittle like glass under tension. "No," I said calmly. "The court came to me. I just gave it a reason." "You don't understand what you're doing." I leaned back in my chair. "On the contrary, Jenna, I understand exactly. You moved money before you had the right. You impersonated an estate representative. You cut the locks off a house you didn't own and taped a lie to the front door." She didn't deny it. That told me more than a confession. "This doesn't have to be a war," she said, but the tremble beneath her words betrayed her. "It already is," I replied. "You just lost the first battle." I hung up before she could finish whatever half apology or veiled threat she had chambered. Then I sat back, breathing slowly, letting the quiet fill the room. There was something about the silence after the first shot is fired, the way the world holds its breath, the quiet before the echo. I had no illusions. This wasn't over. Jenna would lawyer up harder. She'd try to spin her story. She might even dig into my past, looking for dirt. But I had 3 things she didn't: the truth, the law, and time. Daniel gave me the first, Connie gave me the second, and Jenna, with every impulsive move, gave me the third. That afternoon, I visited the bank in person. Armed with the court order, I sat across from a stunned branch manager and watched as her screen changed from unrestricted access to locked estate accounts. "Should I notify Mrs. Green?" she asked. I didn't flinch. She's not Mrs. Green anymore. And she wasn't. Whatever claim she thought she had to Daniel's empire died the moment she underestimated the man who helped him build it. She changed the locks. I rewrote the rules. And the war, quiet as it started, was just beginning to get loud. I was eating a cold sandwich in a plastic chair when it happened. The motel room was quiet, save for the hum of the mini fridge and the distant sound of traffic washing against the window pane. I'd just finished reviewing Connie's latest update. Court order sent, bank accounts frozen, asset list being compiled, when my phone buzzed across the table like it was possessed. Unknown number. Likely the company. I picked it up. "Richard Green." "This is Diane Kohler," came the voice, measured and formal. "Corporate counsel for DG Strategic Freight." My pulse didn't spike. Not anymore. I was past that. "I'm aware of who you are," I said. "Go on." "We've reviewed your filings. The shareholder registry confirms your 12% stake. Your injunction has been received and circulated internally." Her tone was strictly professional. No pity, no condescension. Just business. Good. That meant they were taking me seriously. "The board has been notified of your legal standing," she continued. "As of this morning, all estate-related communication channels previously accessed by Jenna Green have been suspended." I sat forward, elbows on the table. "Meaning?" "She no longer receives shareholder communications. She no longer holds observer status. And we've issued an internal hold on all discussions involving the Green family block pending further legal review." "Board meeting still on?" "Yes, Wednesday morning. You've been added to the invite list. While you do not hold a voting seat, your status as a protected stakeholder entitles you to speak." "Understood." "And, Mr. Green?" "Yes?" She paused. Just a flicker. Then, "There's chatter." I waited. "She's made contact with 2 members of the board, claimed you were acting out of grief, said the court would overturn the injunction within a week. She's trying to frame this as a misunderstanding." I nearly laughed. It's amazing how people try to rewrite the rules when they've been caught red-handed. "She's losing ground," Diane said plainly. "And she knows it." I ended the call feeling more centered than I had in months. Later that evening, Jenna's silence broke. Not in person, not even by phone, but through a single email. Sent at 8:41 p.m., subject line blank, the body only 2 sentences long. "You've made your point. Let's talk." I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded it to Connie. By noon the next day, the court issued a follow-up order. Jenna Green is prohibited from holding herself out as executor or personal representative of the estate in any capacity. The court will consider permanent assignment of a neutral representative in the upcoming session. Any breach of this order will result in sanctions. When Connie read it aloud to me, I didn't cheer. I didn't pump my fist. I just sat very still, my hands folded in front of me, and listened to the sound of the tide turning. "You're going to the board meeting," she said. I nodded. "You're going to speak calmly, factually, and without a shred of venom." "I know." "And if they ask what you want?" "I want accountability," I said, "and the record corrected." "That's the man Daniel trusted," she said. That night I went for a walk down by the old freight yard Daniel used to joke would one day carry his name. The trains still came and went, clanking and screeching like ghosts. I stood by the fence, hands in my coat pockets, watching the red signals blink against the dark like quiet warnings. The grief was still there, lodged deep, but now it was tempered, shaped into something useful. Not rage, not vengeance, purpose. Daniel hadn't just protected me. He'd passed the torch, knowing I'd be the only one with steady enough hands to carry it. And now, the board would hear from the one person Jenna never expected to still be standing, his father. The boardroom was too clean. That's the first thing I noticed. Polished walnut table, chairs with leather that still had the factory creases, untouched water bottles lined up like little soldiers at every seat. The room reeked of money and decisions made behind doors most people never get close enough to knock on. And yet, there I was, seated at the far end of the table, flanked by two attorneys, one mine, one from the company. Gabe sat across from me, jaw tight, eyes unreadable. There were 5 board members present, 2 via Zoom, 3 in person. The mood was polite, but electric. Everyone was waiting for the thunder. I wore my best suit, not because I cared what they thought of me, but because Daniel would have cared. He always said presentation was the handshake before the words. I wore the watch he gave me too, the one with the cracked face and worn leather band. I wanted them to see it when I raised my hand. I wanted them to know exactly who I was. Diane Kohler, corporate counsel, opened the meeting with a dry overview of the agenda, formalities, minutes. Then, our final item, review of shareholder status and associated governance under the Green family block. She turned toward me. Mr. Green, you may speak. I stood slowly, letting the silence stretch for just a beat longer than comfort allowed. My name is Richard Green. I'm the father of Daniel Green, one of the co-founders of this company. You'll find my name listed on your shareholder register, confirmed by the transfer agent as the holder of a 12% stake in this organization. I slid a folder across the table. Inside was the original copy of the founder's agreement, the clause underlined. This company wouldn't exist without my son, I continued, and my son wouldn't have succeeded without me. That's not pride, it's history. I helped him build the foundation this enterprise rests on. When he went public, he ensured I remained protected. I tapped the underlined clause. This clause guarantees no change to the family's shares without my approval. There has been no such approval. Gabe leaned forward. No one's contesting your standing, Richard, but we need clarity on the estate's involvement moving forward. Then you need to understand something, I said, calm but direct. There is no estate involvement. Not from Jenna. The court has issued a formal injunction barring her from acting in any capacity. She is not the executor. She is not a shareholder. She is not your point of contact. I handed out a second document, Connie's summary of the court orders. The court has frozen all assets. A neutral personal representative will be appointed. Until then, all estate matters are under legal lockdown. There was a murmur from the Zoom screen. One of the virtual board members, a man with gray temples and a voice like gravel, asked, "And the evidence of misrepresentation?" Diane answered, flipping through a packet. "We've received formal communication from Mr. Green's counsel. Included are account transfer logs, emails where Jenna Green portrayed herself as executor, and documented attempts to access board-level communications." "Attempts?" another board member asked. "She reached out to me personally," Gabe admitted, tone clipped. "Twice. Told me Richard was confused and grieving. Said she was stepping in to clean up the chaos." The room went quiet again. Then one of the in-person board members, a younger guy in a blue suit too expensive for his age, asked the question everyone was dancing around. "What's your goal here, Mr. Green?" I didn't miss a beat. Stability, truth, and protection for my son's legacy. I'm not here to take over. I'm not asking for a vote. But I will not let someone who manipulated her way into power rewrite the end of my son's story. Another silence, this one longer. Then the gray-templed man on the screen said, "I propose we vote on 3 items. First, to recognize Mr. Green as the only active stakeholder representing the Green family block. Second, to formally restrict Jenna Green from access to board materials. Third, to initiate a third-party review of all estate-related communications and contacts. Seconded, Gabe said. All in favor? Diane prompted. One by one, hands went up, virtual and physical, unanimous. I didn't move, just let the moment land. In one vote, Jenna was officially cut off. That same afternoon, the probate court filed its interim ruling. A neutral personal representative was appointed. Not Jenna, not me. An independent fiduciary. I welcomed it. That meant no more arguments, just facts, clean numbers, and accountability. By sundown, Jenna was locked out. From the money, the company, the narrative. She hadn't just lost control. She'd lost the benefit of the doubt. I walked out of that boardroom slower than I went in. Not because I was tired, but because I wanted to feel the floor under my feet. Solid. Mine again. When I reached the elevator, Gabe followed. You handled that like a pro, he said. No, I replied. I handled it like a father. And in the quiet hum of that descending elevator, we both understood what that meant. This wasn't revenge. It was correction. And now, the whole room knew it. 3 days after the board meeting, she came. It was late afternoon, low October sun casting long shadows across the floor of my modest Bayview condo. Nothing fancy, but it had everything I needed. A clean kitchen, a place to sit with coffee, and silence that wasn't weaponized. The knock came soft, hesitant, like a child asking for permission they already knew they'd blown. I opened the door to see Jenna standing there, purse in one hand, the other curled tightly around the strap like it was the only thing keeping her upright. She was dressed in beige, neutral, unobtrusive. Her makeup was minimal. Her armor was gone. I didn't know you had a stake, she said quietly, stepping in when I didn't invite her but didn't stop her either. I thought you were finished. I said nothing. She sat on the edge of my couch like it might burn her if she leaned back. Her eyes flicked around the room, landing on the same things Daniel used to notice. The fishing photo, the compass keychain, the old watch on the table next to my reading glasses. I thought it would be simpler, she said. You thought I'd disappear, I corrected. Her jaw tightened, not in defiance, more like shame. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy. It made her blink more than usual, like the air itself was pressing down on her. I didn't think you'd fight, she admitted. Not like this. I didn't either, I said. But then you forced me to. She opened her purse and pulled out a small folder. I recognized the tabs even before she laid it on the table. Bank statements, account summaries, vehicle titles, a clean, ordered inventory of things she had taken, now being offered back. I talked to my lawyer, she said. He told me I don't stand a chance if this goes to trial. If you pursue criminal charges, I'm cooked. I stayed seated. She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes, and for the first time, I believed the tears were real. But they didn't change a damn thing. They were just another tactic that came too late. I brought everything, she said, her voice cracking. The house, the accounts, the watch collection, even the education fund, every cent, every item. I stared at her for a long moment, then reached behind me, pulled out a manila envelope from the drawer, and laid it on the table beside hers. It was thicker. This is my list, I said, cross-referenced with court documents, business records, and forensic accounting. You'll see it includes the 529 plan you drained, the auto sale you never reported, and the 3 wire transfers to Nevada. Her face went pale. I'm not asking for a favor, I continued. I'm asking for restoration. If you sign everything back, voluntarily. We'll keep this civil. I won't press criminal charges. You won't see your name in headlines, and we won't spend the next year tearing each other apart." She looked down at the envelope, then at me. "I didn't mean to be cruel," she whispered. "Yes, you did," I said. "You just didn't expect consequences." She blinked hard, like I'd slapped her, but she didn't deny it. That was something. "Do you want me to sign now?" she asked, her voice low. "No," I said. "You'll take it to your lawyer, you'll review it, then you'll return, with everything signed, notarized, and ready for the court to review. You'll also provide a sworn affidavit of financial activity since Daniel's death." She nodded slowly. "And if I don't?" "Then," I said, standing, "the next meeting is with the district attorney." She gathered her things with trembling fingers. At the door, she turned back once, eyes filled with something between regret and old pride. "I loved him," she said. "So did I replied. She left without another word. I sat back down, stared out the window as the sky darkened, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something loosen in my chest. That night, I slept through the night. No dreams, no grinding teeth, no twisting in sheets thinking about locked doors and stolen accounts. Just silence, not the kind that follows grief, the kind that follows justice. The final hearing was quiet. No drama, no raised voices or last-minute theatrics. Just the cold, procedural rhythm of law doing what it's supposed to do, sorting what was once blurred. The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a voice that didn't waste syllables, reviewed the packet Jenna submitted. Everything was there. Transfers reversed, assets returned, affidavits signed, notarized, and filed. The education fund was restored in full. So were Daniel's accounts, his car, his shares, and the house, the one she'd locked me out of with a taped note and a 4-sentence dismissal. Now it was going to Daniel's kids. The court appointed a permanent personal representative, an independent fiduciary with no blood ties, no grudges, and no incentive to play favorites. Exactly what Connie wanted, exactly what I agreed to. Jenna didn't speak once during the hearing. She sat 2 rows behind me, head bowed, a navy coat wrapped tight around her like armor she forgot wasn't bulletproof anymore. Her attorney whispered now and then, but she didn't respond. She didn't even look at me. It didn't matter. By then, I wasn't angry, just resolved. This wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about making sure Daniel's legacy wasn't rewritten in her handwriting. After the hearing, I stepped outside into crisp autumn air, the kind that smells like wood smoke and dry leaves. I didn't rush. Let it settle. Let it feel real. Because it was over. Not the grief, not really, but the chaos, the theft, the betrayal wrapped in polite smiles and thinly veiled emails. That chapter was closed. I didn't go back to the house, not even after the court documents cleared. I didn't want to sleep under a roof where the locks were changed on me like I was some squatter in my own bloodline. Instead, I stayed in my Bayview condo, where peace lived in the silence, and the light came through the windows without judgment. And I built something new. With Gabe's help and approval from the board, I took the observer seat Daniel had once hinted at creating for me. I wasn't a decision maker, but I was a presence. And in business, presence is power. They listened when I spoke, not out of obligation, but out of earned weight. I proposed the idea during one of those early board meetings, quiet, deliberate. The Daniel Green Scholarship, I said, for logistics students, the kind who build things, not chase headlines, the kind who know what it means to start in a garage with 2 hands and a whiteboard. Gabe seconded it without hesitation. Unanimous approval. We funded it with a chunk of Daniel's estate, my portion of it. I didn't want the cash. I wanted meaning. The first award went to a young woman from Detroit, single mom, studying supply chain analytics at night while working warehouse shifts during the day. I shook her hand after the ceremony, told her Daniel's story, gave her the watch he wore before the IPO. "You'll know when you've earned your own," I said. And I meant it. The press asked questions, of course. Why I didn't sue Jenna into the ground, why I didn't press charges, why I let her walk away when I had the upper hand. I answered the same way every time. Some lessons require silence before thunder. They'd blink, confused, and then I'd add, "The thunder came, and its echo is still ringing." Because it was never about retribution. It was about the pause, the hold, the moment between betrayal and response where you gather yourself, sharpen your tools, and strike when it counts, not when it stings. I've seen people swing too early. I've seen them burn down everything just to feel warm. That's not strength. That's desperation in a hero costume. What I did? That was patience. And that patience reminded everyone, especially Jenna, who in this family knew how to carry a legacy without breaking it. Now sometimes, I still get letters. From former employees, from Daniel's classmates, from people who remember the early days of the company and wanted to say they were glad I stepped in, that someone did. But the ones that matter most, the ones from his kids. "Thank you, Grandpa. I miss him too. We're taking care of the tree in the backyard. Simple lines, honest, true. And that's the legacy, not stocks or properties or board seats, but the knowledge that Daniel's name will be spoken with respect, not regret, because his father knew how to wait." Then thunder.